Welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of the Liberty First Foundation Roundtable. A little bit of technical difficulty. My mic wasn't on. Everybody will be joining us here shortly. Everybody's kind of running a little bit late. That's kind of why we get late start tonight. So that being said, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Share this live stream. Here. Hey, Michael, you can see your backdrop, and that's it.
Yeah, I know. I'm working on it. But how is everybody?
I'm doing good, but it's just you and I.
Yeah, Dow's going to be here in a little bit, but it's a rainy day in upstate New York.
It is. It's nasty up here.
City isn't doing much better either. But then again, isn't that the condition of the entire country at this point? It feels like just a gloomy day.
I mean, honestly, okay. I've seen like 4 or 5 interviews where people have specifically asked Harris what her plans were to lower prices. And on each of them, she has outright avoided answering the question.
Well, the answer is that she's just going to spend money. She's going to print more money, spend more money, which will make the poor even more poor. That's her plan. But she just doesn't want to. Of course, if you say that, then no one's going to vote for you. Instead, she says, I'm middle class. So, matter of fact,
yeah, that's about her only answer that she has. I come from a middle-class family.
Which is the answer to everything, which is an answer to nothing.
It is
probably the most stupid answer I've ever seen.
Well, and that's it. She's trying to portray that she is going to be a fighter for the middle class. But she has yet to put forth anything that is going to help the middle class.
Yeah. It's incredible. And I have, where is it? I wanted to share something. Here it is. Sorry, I'm just trying to bring it up. Don't mind that I'm not able to be seen at the moment. I'll work through that. But here's something that just came out from Barack Obama. Okay?
Right.
So as you can see here, Obama is saying, today, Kamala Harris proposed common sense ideas. I love when they say common sense, which means doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It's their key word to make you think if you don't understand it, it's your fault.
Yeah.
If it doesn't make sense to you, that's your fault. No, it means that's just their bypass word so that you don't think too hard about it.
Right.
But he goes on, propose common sense ideas to keep our economy growing and working for all of us. This is $100 million for manufacturing businesses, which will now bring back the manufacturing industry. It's a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
She grew up middle class. Why does that matter? And she understands what it takes to build an economy that lowers costs, creates jobs, and puts American workers and families first. If she knew all of that as vice president, why didn't she speak about it? Why hasn't she done anything about it?
Why hasn't anything been done over the last 4 years?
Right. Well, and here's where I responded to Barack Obama and to Kamala Harris. So I responded to both of them. I said, does she or do you, Barack Obama, recall your youth? Because that's what you're talking about. So you're 60-year-old people. Do you remember when you were 10, 50 years ago, half a century ago? Most people don't. Better yet, millionaire walled off homes in ultra wealthy neighborhoods like Martha's Vineyard, like where Kamala lives, that yeet illegal aliens in 24 hours, which they did in Martha's Vineyard. They did that in Kamala Harris's neighborhood. Isn't very common man in America today, because you can't do that in the Bronx, and you can't do that in upstate New York, and you can't do that around the rest of the country. When was the last time either Kamala Harris or Barack Obama had to skip paying any of their bills so that they could put food on the table for them and their families. 3 decades ago,
At
maybe
least.
even more than that. Maybe since they were teenagers.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. They want everyone to think, oh, well, we grew up middle class. So I remember. No, you don't. No, you don't. You're multimillionaires because you work for the government, which doesn't make sense. I don't know how they get to become multimillionaires when they work for the government. The moment they
that's
got
something
into the. Go ahead.
I've never understood.
Yeah.
Okay. And if we look back at the last 6 presidents, going back to Reagan increased his net worth slightly while he's in office. But if you look at the rest of them, everyone else has expanded their net worth pretty significantly, with the exception of Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the only person whose net worth has actually declined while he's in office.
Well, that's because they had such a campaign against him, and they were demonizing him, every business he had, everyone that he knew. So, I mean, I'm not surprised. But the thing that really gets me here is what's given that both Trump and Kamala have a problem right now that they're not giving us details. But the details we do have, like the child tax credit increase that Kamala Harris has offered, $6,000. She leaves out the part where it says for the first year.
Right.
So from the moment your kid is born until they hit 1 year old, you can get this $6,000 child tax credit. But they leave out if your kid's between the age of 1 and 21, you get nothing. Oh, they forgot to mention that part because most 90% of people, this is not going to apply to. It's not going to help them. And printing, and again, I have to say, the CBO, Congressional Budget Office, which is neutral under the Biden administration, under the Obama administration, and the Trump administration, has told us consistently that arbitrarily just dumping money into the economy, like with minimum wage, like with her plans to stimulate the economy, it creates more poor people because you're going to have it's going to create more inflation, which means the prices are going to be higher and the value of every dollar is going to be lower. And more people will get fired because businesses can't afford this. It's very upsetting to me that they're playing this game with the public.
Well, and here's something else that I find it really, really interesting is they're trying to portray Trump followers and Republicans as being violent. But the only violent rhetoric that I'm hearing anywhere is from the left.
Well, it's always from the left. You ever notice? I still don't know why my camera's not working right now, folks, but it's always from the left. What we have seen consistently. Think about BLM riots. Think about every time. Just a month ago, the DNC convention, there was 4,000 people, all of them on the left, protesting and trying to break into the DNC meeting, which they had walled off and they had police there, and they were trying to break in there. Every time the left doesn't get what it wants, there are riots, there is arson, there are roads in cities that are blocked off, there is various amounts of violence, people fighting with the police, there are massive amounts of arrests. When you look at the right, you don't see any of that.
Right.
It just doesn't happen.
Okay. And in fact, often when you see the right out and about having discussions and so forth, they are out there trying to open dialogue, trying to have a coherent discussion, and all they get is pushback. They get called racist. They get called this, that, and the other. Fascist, etc., sexist. So you don't see the left trying to open up legitimate dialogues. You see the left opening with attacking dialogues.
Well, their goal
They do the orange man bad,
always,
violent MAGA,
always.
right wing white supremacists. That's what they lead their narratives with.
Almost always, yeah. They're demonizing and fear mongering. I mean, I was just talking to someone about it. If you're listening to, I was on another social media platform and listening to the rhetoric right now, it's all about feelings. Kamala, their whole slogan right now is, oh, joy. Joy doesn't pay taxes. Joy doesn't protect the southern border. Joy doesn't stop members of ISIS or Al Qaeda or any other terrorist group trying to enter into America. We've had over 378 of them, and that doesn't stop it. Joy doesn't stop them. Joy doesn't pay the bills or put food on the table. Joy doesn't provide electricity for your lights. It doesn't put gas in your car. Joy is a transitory emotion. It's a feeling, and it has no use. It is the perfect excuse. Oh, we're talking about it's meant to take you away from thinking. Don't you feel good? Yeah, but am I good? There's a big difference between the two. I don't care how you feel. How are you actually? You can feel fantastic and you have cancer. That doesn't mean you're good. It just means you feel good today, right this moment. And a little bit later, you might not. In fact, you might be dead. So, and I use it in those terms because I want people to understand that's what they have so little substance in the Harris-Walz campaign. They can't point to anything substantive. So they have to keep people constantly distracted by breads and circuses and feelings.
Here's the thing. She keeps describing this quote unquote opportunity economy,
which is a stupid thing. That means nothing.
It does. Okay?
Every economy is an opportunity.
Here's from her when she appeared in Raleigh, where she supposedly introduced this. It is one where everyone, regardless of who they are or where they start, has an opportunity to build wealth for themselves and their children, and where we remove the barriers to opportunity so anyone who wants to start a business or advance their career can access the tools and resources that are necessary to do so, she said.
Yeah. But
okay, how?
That means nothing. That means nothing.
Exactly. How?
You can access the tools.
How?
I can do that now. What does that mean? Access to tools. Access to tools to your wealth. That's
what barriers?
It is. It's that this is her saying she wants to be unburdened by the past. It means nothing. It is an empty statement. This is pure sugar. And people are eating it up.
Well, they are.
And
it scares me because she has absolutely nothing. She has no policies. She has zero agenda. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
So, and people, like you said, people are eating it up because she will be the fun president.
I don't even. Why would anyone want a fun president? That's not the job. The job is to be effective and efficient. I don't care if you like them or not. That's meaningless. I don't care if you want to dream about sleeping with them or having a beer with them or having them be your best buddy. Meaningless. It's they don't need it. It's the same people who say I have to be friends with my kids. Parents who say I have to be friends with my kids. No, you don't. Absolutely unnecessary. The job is be the parent, not the buddy.
Yeah. It doesn't make, I mean, nothing that she has come out with, okay? I mean, she's on her site, and I'll actually put this up here real quick.
Yeah, Dal, I see you.
Hey, Dal. So,
Evening.
on her website, it says New Way Forward. Vice President Harris and Governor Walz are fighting for a new way forward that protects our fundamental freedoms. Well, right there, that's wrong. Okay, because one of our fundamental freedoms is the Second Amendment, our right to be able to protect ourselves, not only in our homes, but to protect ourselves from government. Strengths our democracy. Well, I didn't know that our democracy was weak. But anyway, we're not a democracy. We're a republic. We're not a country of mob rule or of tyrannical majorities. Ensures every person has the opportunity to just not just get by, but to get ahead. Okay, again, how? As a prosecutor, attorney general, senator, and now vice president of the United States, Kamala Harris always stood up for the people against predators, scammers, and powerful interests. She promises to be a president for all Americans, a president who unites us around our highest aspirations, and a president who always fights for the American people. From the courthouse to the White House, that has been her life's work.
Yeah. Let's remember, I don't care when she was AG. I don't care that she was a
I actually
prosecutor.
do.
Well, no, I don't, because she's vice president now. She's looking to be president. That has nothing to do with being a prosecutor. It has nothing to do with an AG. It has nothing to do with being a senator. It's an entirely different skill set. And we have seen that in her capacity as vice president, she has failed in every aspect, whether it's the border or overseas.
The attorney, let's be fair about this. The
I am being
attorney
fair.
general is a part of the executive office of a state. Okay. The district attorney is a part of the executive office of a municipality. Okay. So both of those roles she has worked in as an executive office in an executive capacity. Not as the lead executive, but as a part of the executive branch. In both of those roles, it has been proven unequivocally that she did not fight for the people, because she sent a lot of people to jail, wrongly to prison, including one man sent him to death row, where there's evidence proving his innocence that she withheld.
Yeah.
So she does not fight for Americans. She fights for herself. She only cares about winning. That's all she cares about.
Well, she's an opportunist. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah,
And-
just ask Willie Brown.
Well, that's how she got into politics. I mean, it's a fair statement because it's real.
Yeah.
But on top of that, we're seeing also the yellow journalism, the propaganda machine in force, as we're watching government, really, the media spin as hard as they can. Everything she says is supposed to be perfect and wonderful, and everything she has done has been eliminated. her record as being the most liberal senator in the Senate wiped out. Her time as AG severely edited. Her role as border czar, that's somewhat retroactively rewritten what it was supposed to be. There's a lot of problems what we're seeing there, but we also see the other side of it happening at the same time. Donald Trump is orange man bad. They're talking about, this violent rhetoric that's coming from the right, as the left continues to say, well, Donald Trump will end all democracy. Donald Trump is the end of America. Somebody has to remove Donald Trump. They're still using the same language that they have consistently always used, that they have never stopped using, that has created an environment where we have these psychotic and crazy leftists that are pulling out guns trying to assassinate a former president and a current presidential candidate. And the news media is trying to insert, well, maybe it's a hoax. Maybe it's a hoax. Let's not talk about that. There's anything and everything else in the news. This is a historic moment. We should be talking about this. This should be something that should be headline news until we figured out every single person connected to these shooters, especially since it's been back to back. In fact, there's now, somewhere between 3 to 5 different assassination attempts we're now becoming aware of because they've been hiding this. And yet they keep telling us, but Orange Man is bad. Well, if he's so really, then I don't see it. I don't see, because we have a record for him. We have a history. We have proof. There's an empirical set of data that we can look at and compare. And everything that he's going to start World War III. Geez, sounds like 2016. Didn't happen. Oh, he's going to destroy the economy. Sounds like 2016. Didn't happen. Everything they're saying about him is the same thing they've said in 2016. The only thing that's changed is instead of Hillary, now we have Kamala. It's the same argument. I would expect the same result. I mean, does that not make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Currently, I'm trying to look up. There was a post on social media yesterday that was talking about her role as prosecutor, and one of the things that they did when they were doing some digging is they found out that she actually hasn't done any prosecution for any appeals. It's just been original cases, and then she has never fought any of the appeals against her cases. So she's never actually done the full job of a prosecutor.
Shocking.
She just goes for the initial win, and then after that, her cases can be overturned, but it doesn't matter as far as she's concerned because her initial win is the only win.
Prosecutors make their bones off of success. No one cares about anything else that they do.
Yeah. I'm going to mute for a sec.
Yep. No, I find it very ludicrous that she even has a following, of 2 people. Like it just herself and Waltz. I mean, it really doesn't seem like she has anything to offer.
No, she doesn't. But there are far too many people who are blue no matter who. They're going to vote Democrat no matter what,
right?
Because that's all they ever do, and they don't think about the consequences of their actions. They don't consider anything. And in the meantime, and I'm sure we'll talk about this, there's Congress is passing the buck, and they're pushing our budget, United States budget, until December after the election.
Man, I fought with Molinaro over Johnson so hard. I kept bombing his email and telling him, don't back Johnson, back a American first freshman even for speaker if you have to, but don't go for somebody that's been in the system for a while. Pick somebody new. Nothing.
Well, of course he wouldn't do that. Why would he? Why would he? He's an establishment Republican. And I say that having met Molinaro more than once, having spoken to him both publicly and privately, not intensely, but
No.
I've had conversations with him privately and publicly. He's an establishment Republican.
And it just goes to show you, though, that the title of representative means nothing to these people. Like this is the issue.
He's representing the party.
Which is not what your job is. Your job is to represent the people, the constituents that are within your borders.
Well, that's not the way that it's done now. And that's true of Democrats. It's true of Republicans. People represent their parties. Kirsten Gillibrand is essentially the same thing as Mark Molinaro. And there's a dozen different, virtually every Democrat. I mean, Jerry Nadler is another great example of it at the House level. These are Democrats that are there for the party, not for the public. And I'm pointing in New York State. So we've got Kirsten Gillibrand, we've got Jerry Nadler, we've got Mark Molinaro. Those are examples of it.
Right.
So it's very common, especially as you get more polarized in your state. You see that a lot in California. You see it in Illinois. You see it in Maryland. You see that even to an extent in Michigan. You see that hyperpolarization, which is based on party ideology, not public benefit. And that's one of the big problems. And that's why you get people like AOC or Ilhan Omar, Anna Presley, formerly, what's his name? Jamal Bowman, formerly, what's the other one that lost her race? One of the squad members. It wasn't, Omar survived, but the other one didn't. One of the 4 original ones. You remember?
Not off the top of my head, no.
It's Cori Bush. Was it Cori Bush who lost?
Yes.
I think it was Cori. Yeah, it was Cori Bush.
Cori Bush lost.
Yeah. And so, but they all represent the same thing. Their ideology, not even the party, the ideology, and not the public. And that's our politics today. How can we expect to have a better outcome? I mean, these people, they're not even willing to pass a budget. They're kicking it down. And we keep getting these stopgaps. We're not getting a budget. We're getting a continuing resolution over and over again. Right. Because no one wants to take responsibility for $35 trillion in debt, $6.8 trillion deficit every single year.
Oh, hell, Chuck Schumer is proud of it. Last night, before I went to go lay down, he had posted on Twitter that they had already approved the CR without amendments. He's like, I got notified tonight that we're going to go ahead and we're going to pass the CR without amendments. And he was very proud to announce that. And it's like, great. So we're going to kick the can down the road and put ourselves further in debt. You guys are going to overspend again. And you've decided to go ahead and do this without actually providing any benefit to the people. So, which the benefit to the people would have been to be able to trust the results of our election by making it mandatory for federal elections to have ID to vote as a citizen. Like you have to prove your citizenship in order to be able to vote.
No, they voted against that.
Yeah, they did.
HR 8281. Democrats voted against forcing or allowing cities and states and counties to require ID,
and they tried to tie it right, and they tried to tie it to the CR, and they wouldn't pass with it tied to the CR. But that was the leverage: was that if you're gonna get a continuing resolution, then you have to pass the Save America Act with it as an amendment, and they wouldn't do it. And so, with the government shutdown looming, they basically were like, well. All these federal workers are not going to get any money, and all these people in the military are not going to get paid. And it's like, no, you guys are going to get paid as soon as the government starts up again. You guys,
no, that wasn't their fear. It had nothing to do with whether or not people get paid.
That's always the argument with the people that
the
are
real
in the,
argument. No, this is an election year. This is a presidential election year that is close, that is tight. The answer is, oh, they're going to vote against us because of the inconvenience, because of the anger. It's not, yeah, they know they're going to get paid. That's not the problem. It's that they didn't get paid yet, that there's an inconvenience now. And because of that, that's all they need. That means, oh, I may not show up and vote, or I'll, worse yet, vote for the other guy. And that's why they said, oh, no, we can't shut it down.
that may be
Because
why
we'll
the
be the ones
politicians are thinking
responsible.
about it.
Huh?
That may be why the politicians, the way the
Yeah.
politicians are thinking about it, but the people on the ground are saying, well, no, we can't have the government shut down. We support the politicians doing this because we want to get paid. They don't.
I don't know that the average person's worried about the politicians. Yes, they're worried about getting paid. I don't think they're worried about the politicians at all. Politicians are worried about the votes.
No, they want their politicians to do the CR because they don't want to have like you say, they don't want to have the inconvenience of not being paid for several weeks. Because most of these people they spend, right? So they're not saving anything. They're living from paycheck to paycheck, and if they see a month without a paycheck, they're sunk as federal workers in most cases because they live beyond their means. They're used to a certain lifestyle. They wouldn't have that. So they're for their politicians doing this, whether it's an election year or not. But for the politicians, it definitely is a matter of, well, if we inconvenience them, they may actually punish us. We don't want that. But for the average person that's talking on the ground that has any kind of government contracts, even corporations that normally would bank on government money in a certain quarter, they're like, we have to have this continuing resolution or we're sunk. As far as I'm concerned, fine. Put me on furlough. I work for a government subsidized corporation. I'll take 30 days because I want the people to benefit, not to have the government benefit again and pass the buck.
Yeah, but you got to remember, Dal, most people can't survive 30 days. They can't even survive a week without money.
Yeah,
because they don't have the skills. They didn't stockpile anything. Even though we've been in a global food crisis, something I've been talking about since February of 2022. We're in a global food crisis. They can barely afford anything. They never stockpiled. They never prepared for any of this, even though it was apparent to everyone. I started talking about the U.S. economy failing in February of 2021. I have the video. Matter of fact, I can tell you the date. It was February 17th of 2021. I remember it exactly, that I predicted this economy.
Yeah.
We've been talking about it on this live stream since shortly after Biden took office.
Yeah, I was one of the first to identify it, but you have people who have never prepared because they've always believed government will take care of me. And if government isn't taking care of them and filling up that difference in that gap in what they need, because about 60% of the population actually gets some form of government aid. So if you don't have that, they will fall apart. And after what we've gone through with after the lockdowns, people can't survive without this. So they're terrified of this. I think most people are terrified of a government shutdown because they have yet to recover. And yes, just users being banned, you are correct. It does sound like the Weimar Republic, because it is the Weimar Republic. This is exactly that same scenario, except it's happening in slow motion. The Weimar Republic, which happened between World War I and World War II, in fact, it was a big part of World War II happening, was when Germany had to pay reparations to France, which inflated, and they just printed money. They just printed as much money as they needed to be able to make their payments to France, but their money became worthless. You would literally, in the morning, it would take a wheelbarrow full of money to be able to buy a loaf of bread, by the time you came back from work, it would take 2 wheelbarrows full of money to be able to
Right.
buy that same loaf of bread. We're in that same process. It's just happening in slow motion, but it's the same thing.
And if you want something that's even closer to our timeline in modern day, look at the way Venezuela uses their currency.
Or
Venezuela currency is worthless except for fire starter and toilet paper.
True. It's they blew themselves up.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. It's the same thing. The government took over so much, promised so much more, and completely failed on all of it because government doesn't do anything well or better than the individual. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So something else that they are trying to tout that's been a success of the current Biden administration is that crime is down.
Sort
Okay.
of.
Yeah. Okay.
Sort of.
Okay.
So
there's some caveats with this. Okay.
Oh, yes, a hell of a
But
lot.
here is Pete Buttigieg. Crime is down. Some here doubt or deny the FBI data showing crime is down. A lot of that is just politics. But if you're sincerely uncertain or skeptical, then you'll want to know the FBI data is corroborated by others, apples to apples law enforcement studies.
Except for the
Sort
marshal.
Okay.
Sort of. Sort of. He's leaving out a couple of essential points there.
Here, this is on Bloomberg. Murder rate mystery. New FBI crime stats do not include New York City, LA. Biggest U.S. cities haven't converted to new reporting system. Policymakers are urged to exercise care amid data blind spots.
In other words, it's fake. The numbers are wrong because you don't have some of the largest metropolitan areas across the country. New York City and LA are not the only ones.
Right.
And then there's also the addition in that, well, what about the revolving doors, as in California and in New York, where they have people aren't necessarily being charged for the crimes that they're committing, like robbery is down, but that's in part because, well, like California and in parts of New York, you have to commit over $1,000 worth of robbery before they will actually charge you with the crime and have it written in the books.
So
how
FBI,
much of that is happening?
Okay, here's a headline from The Independent. FBI says crime has plummeted to start 2024, but is missing a big part of the data. Data informing FBI's figures is supplied voluntarily by law enforcement agencies across the U.S. and do not include major metropolitan areas, including Los Angeles and New York, where crime is historically high.
And most other places that actually report on crime, they don't go through law enforcement. They actually go through the National Crime Victimization Survey, because a lot of crime goes unreported because people will call the police and they'll ask for help, and the police will be like, well, there's nothing we can do, and we're not really going to investigate that. And so there's never a report generated. So the survey is actually closer to a true mark, because you usually have a sample of about 240,000 people in about 150,000 households. And they go with that to demonstrate the flux in crime, whether it goes up or whether it goes down. That tends to be more reliable than any of the FBI data.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. FBI stats show plunge in violent crime, but there's a catch. The first 3 months of 2024 saw a historic drop in rates of violent crime and murder across the country, according to newly released FBI statistics. But the numbers don't tell the whole story, say some analysts say. Okay, and i.e. meaning that it's underreported. Four reasons why we should worry about missing crime data. The FBI's crime data is still incomplete, and politicians are taking advantage of it. For the 2024 elections, for more than 100 years, the FBI has been collecting crime data from local police departments across the country through the Uniform Crime Reporting Program. which has been the gold standard for national crime statistics. Then it all changed in 2021. In an effort to modernize the system, the FBI started taking data from the old summary system and only accepted data through a new system. Thousands of police agencies fell through the cracks because they didn't catch up with the changes on time.
Which also tells you how badly they're administering everything.
More than 6,000 law enforcement agencies were missing from the FBI's national crime data last year, representing nearly 1/3 of the nation's 18,000 police agencies. That just means a quarter of the U.S. population was not represented in the federal crime data last year, according to the Marshall Project analysis.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Go on.
So right there, multiple agencies or multiple reporting sources, okay, left, right, have all stated that the FBI data is missing key cities. Okay, that's the only reason why our crime statistics are appearing to be lower.
Yep. And if you want an analogy, actually a really good one is the quicksand analogy. You have like 10 people in quicksand, and you have somebody on the shore that's counting the number of people that are in the quicksand, and you're watching them in the quicksand. And there's 10 people, 1, 2, and then but they're all sinking, and then one disappears. Well, now there's only 9 people in quicksand, isn't there? Because you don't count the 10th person, you can't see them, so you don't know if they're there or not. Then there's 8 people. Then there's 7 people. Then there's 5, 4, 3. Now there's no people. Now there's no crime because you don't see any of it. There's nothing to report. This is what's happening with the reporting about our crime statistics. Is the fact that there's no report, so there's no crime as far as the government's concerned. And that's the same with any kind of bureaucracy. They can only count what they're willing to report that they see. If they're not willing to report anything, then there's no evidence that there's anything happening. It's like with the, you know how much digging was done after they were talking about the illegals in Springfield, right? And journalists reached out to report that one bureaucrat said nothing was happening. Meanwhile, people are going out there, they're talking to people in Springfield, they're actually looking at people complaining at the city council about these illegals and all the problems that they're bringing. Mm-hmm. And it turns out that they actually are eating the cats and stealing the dogs.
Mm-hmm.
It happens. But because one bureaucrat said that it wasn't happening and that there were no reports, it isn't happening. That's the same thing with these crime statistics. It's utter bullshit.
Well, they're editing for the feeling to be able to maintain their power. That's ultimately what they're doing.
Well, and that's the other thing. And another thing, they've been saying that corporations must pay their fair share. And they've been harping about Donald Trump's cut of the corporate tax rate. Okay, the first thing I want to say about this before we go any further is the tax rate for corporations from the Trump tax cuts did not take effect until 2018. That's number one. Number two, tax rates are not controlled by the president. Tax rates are controlled by Congress. It was Congress that lowered the corporate tax rate. It was not Donald Trump. He may have asked them to lower the corporate tax rate. He may have put forth a recommendation to pass legislation to lower the corporate tax rate, but the president cannot lower tax rates.
No, he can make it's like anything from the executive. He can say, this is what I hear from the people. I think this is a great idea. I encourage you to debate it in Congress and come up with legislation. But it's up to Congress whether they actually do it or not.
I want to go over this chart here. This is from the Federal Reserve. Okay. Federal government tax receipts on corporate income. Okay, so in 2017, we saw taxes collected drop. We saw them drop again in 2018. 2019 was the pandemic. 2020, we started recovering from the pandemic.
No, pandemic started in
2019.
technically there were people who had the pandemic in late November, December of 2019. It was unrecognized. Realistically, February of 2020 is when we started seeing government action, such as restricting air flights from China to California. Was in 2020 when we saw Nancy Pelosi marching and Chuck Schumer marching through Chinatown. That was in mid-February of 2020. Lockdowns proceeded in March of 2020. Right.
So anyway, okay, that explains our drop here these couple of years. Okay. The Trump tax cuts are still in effect and will be in effect until 2025. Okay. 2020, we started recovering from the pandemic. 2021, we are at 2022, corporate income tax collected was looks like $368 trillion. Is that right?
No.
Huh?
No. It would be you're thinking
billions of dollars. Oh, yeah. $368 billion. Okay, that's a point, not a comma. So $368 billion was collected. Okay. In 2006, is the first year higher before that, where it's higher. In 2023, $409 billion was collected from corporations. So under the Trump tax cuts, more tax revenue is being collected from corporations.
Which is only normal because we have more business happening. When there's more business, there's more taxes. That's natural.
And because the consumers ultimately fuel the economy, there's more spending going on with all those more numerous businesses. And so they're definitely paying more in taxes.
So what I'm trying to get at is Trump lowering the tax rate from 35% down to 21% actually improved on the amount of taxes that are being collected from corporations. Prior to that, corporations were hiding income, to avoid from paying taxes.
They weren't hiding it. They put it directly overseas. They kept it out of the United States on purpose and visibly. Everybody knew where it was. We couldn't touch it.
Well, they used, as Trump said in his debate with Hillary, he paid his taxes the same way that she and all of her friends do. They just use the tax code the way it's intended to be used to protect their assets. If you want everybody to pay their taxes in a transparent manner, you have to change the tax laws or get rid of them entirely, which I am for.
We can't get rid of taxes. We can't.
I would say that except for certain things that are the jurisdiction of the Constitution. So taxation for the Marines and the Navy, right? So that would be constitutional. And for certain administrative aspects, you could levy taxes. But for everything else, all this various government spending, they should crowdfund it. Here's an example.
No.
Okay. Here's an example. Under our current tax code in 2016, when Trump was asking for money for a wall and he couldn't get it through Congress, there were a group of people that put together a give, send, go, or a crowdfund for the border wall.
Yeah, build the wall. I interviewed a couple of people from that organization.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you remember how much they raised while we were being taxed?
Yeah.
under the current tax system. Now imagine what people would do if they had more access to their own money instead of having the government figure out where
Not
that
going to
money
happen.
was supposed to go.
Not going to happen.
It may not happen, but I'll tell you. But I understand you're being practical, but I'm
Yes.
talking about if you really wanted to fix the system and you wanted to bring government to heel, people have to retain their own money. And if the government thinks that they have a good idea, it would force government to be efficient. It would force government to have to sell the people on an idea. So if they wanted to spend money, they would have to beg for it.
Okay. And Dal, while I understand and appreciate the ideal that you're espousing, it is not functionally possible. We can't do that because of the problem. Because we have $35 trillion in debt and soon to be $36 trillion. Because we're spending $6 trillion a year, we can't do that.
We certainly could.
Because
we
the best we can
could.
do. No, it would crash the system. It would crash the world. The best we can do, realistically, in the near term, in my lifetime, and I'm 56, so, take that as you will. But in my lifetime, the best thing that we can do, it isn't Bitcoin, it isn't digital currency, none of that crap, because you still retain the same inherent problem with government. They're spending more that they bring in. What we need to do is restrict the spending of government, shrink the government down. People were screaming at Donald Trump because, oh my God, Donald Trump is going to get rid of the Department of Education. Thank God, $120 billion being wasted every year. We don't need it. It is a waste of money. We need to shrink. But here's the thing. We can't, if we shut down the Department of Education, we really can't shut down any other department of government, because how many people suddenly become unemployed? How many people do we now have to get new jobs for, or bring them to a more local level? Maybe they work at local government, state government. But to do that reallocation of personnel, to reallocate and bring this back to the states, which I think is the best idea, takes time. And we can't do that and get rid of the ATF at the same exact time and get rid of the IRS at the same time. Can't. It's too much. The system will crash. I'm being very practical here. I'm not saying that that's what I want. I'm not telling you that's what I like. But I'm telling you that realistically, for the system to continue, for us to be able to maintain the quality of life we have right now, we can only target one thing at a time. We can either drop the U.S. spending, our debt, our government, either shrink it by 20% or get rid of a department. One or the other, they equate to about the same thing. Then we can go to the next thing.
The unfortunate part, though, Mike, is that the fact is we're way beyond not being able to maintain any sort of system. We are going to hurt. Period.
Well, yeah.
But it's even if you don't. So, for example, we get rid of the Department of Education, just one. That still doesn't solve the problem of mandated taxation that is going to give them give Congress the sense that they can continuously spend. They're not willingly going to stop spending.
I believe, and this is me being Pollyanna. I know I get called Pollyanna so often, but I would believe if we can actually shut down, because there is no program, no department, no agency of the government that in my lifetime and you'd have to go back to the end of Prohibition, was the last time that the United States government actually got rid of a department or shrank a department. In fact, they didn't, because the G-men, the federal agents just got rolled into the IRS.
The ATF.
Yeah, the revenuers became.
They just got changed into a new organization. So we have never seen a government shrink. I was talking. There was a live stream the other day that I was on, and this woman, one of the individuals in the panel, a woman mentioned that she was shocked to find out that the United States government has never stopped spending money on anything it has ever approved to spend money on.
No.
And I think a lot of people don't know that today if the government has spent even $1 on something, it is now spending $10 on that same thing, even if that thing is obsolete, even if it is non-functional, even if it makes no sense whatsoever. We never stop spending. So the answer is, if we start to reduce that, lawmakers, the elected officials, out of fear or just self-preservation, will cut back the spending, because that then signs, hey, if you're not cutting back, you're going to be replaced, because everyone can see it now. And once people realize, oh, but we can get rid of this agency. Oh, but we can stop spending on shrimp on a treadmill with cocaine. We can not have to fund these stupid things.
Well, I found out something interesting. I was doing a little bit of research, trying to figure. I saw a post someplace, and I don't remember what platform it is on, that one of the agencies was actually a spinoff from a reorganization of agencies by the executive department, and that prior to that, that agency didn't exist. I think it was actually the EPA. Okay. And I started looking into it, and I started looking into several other agencies as well. And most of the agencies that are actually functioning within the executive department were never created by Congress. They were actually created through reorganization of the executive branch. Okay. So a lot of these agencies don't even have any legitimacy to them. One of them being the ATF. The ATF was actually never created by Congress. It was actually a spinoff from the IRS, and the IRS, in a reorganization move, established the ATF and made it its own agency. Okay, that was accountable to itself.
I'm okay
and
with
no
getting
longer
rid of it.
accountable to the IRS.
I'm okay with getting rid of. I can see the ATF would have come out of prohibition, and then the end of prohibition, IRS restructures, ATF gets spun off onto its own thing. Then comes the NFA, 1932, because of the gangs, and that would
The
have
thing
spun it off.
is Congress didn't authorize it. Congress did not do it.
I understand.
Okay, there was no authority to do it.
I'm okay with removing them, but again,
Exactly, they should be removed.
I have no problem with that.
And that's
my
my point. Is most of the agencies within the executive branch were not created by Congress. They were not created by any legislation that was passed by Congress. They were committed. Most of them were actually established through some type of reorganization of the executive department that was instituted by the president in an effort to gain more power.
I am not questioning their legitimacy. I don't think most of them are legitimate, and I don't think most of them are necessary. My bigger thing is, but we can only take action on so much. And again, I'm looking at not collapsing the country in trying to correct the government. That's my only concern. I don't care. People want to get rid of the ATF first. Fantastic. I think the Department of Education is more important because it's dealing with the next generation. It's dealing with teaching people to be indoctrinated and not to think, and that has a long-term effect. But if the majority of people want to get rid of the ATF first, I'm perfectly fine with that. But there's only so much we can do at one time. But I do think we need to do it. And I think when we're watching this election, 2024, and we're seeing the consequence of the lack of planning, the consequence of kicking the can down the road, the consequence of having weak leaders that have to deal with this snowball effect. And this is what happens. I mean, it's kind of been masked because whether people like G.W. Bush or not, he was a strong and relatively effective leader. He wasn't the worst president. He was about a middle of the road president. Donald Trump has been mostly a middle of the road president. It doesn't matter if you like them or not. Doesn't matter. But they held together and basically put the glue back in place. So you get Clinton blows up the economy, blows up the government. And I mean, that's why we had the stock market crash, the internet bubble that he was constantly being told that it's going to blow up. This was a mania and did nothing about it. And then handed it over to G.W. Bush, who then has to glue it back together, make it somehow jury rig and make it work. That gives us Obama, who decides, hey, shovel-ready jobs will solve everything. I will just give people checks and free Obama money. And that blew up the government again. And now it's all breaking. And now you get Trump, who has to glue it back together and try and jury rig it to make it work. And then we get Biden, who's deciding, hey, I'm just going to pay for Ukraine forever. I'm just going to have Ukraine going on, and I'm going to have another undeclared war, which is going to be in the Red Sea against the Houthis. And, you know, we're going to be just letting.
And while we're at it, we'll throw some more shovel-ready jobs out there.
Yeah, and we'll also have, you know, an open border so that the infrastructure in every single major city in the nation will fall apart. And the next person, which probably will be Trump, let's be realistic, is going to have to, again, glue it back to try and glue everything back together and jury rig it so it can keep going. No, we need to shrink. We need to, rather than trying to jury rig it and keep it going, we've got to shrink it down. And I think people are starting to see that as they see Kamala sitting there going, I'll just print more money. That's it. We'll throw money at the problem. That's always worked before.
The thing of it is,
never worked.
The thing of it is, though, is I'm hearing a lot of talk where it's just people want to rip the Band-Aid off. There's not a lot of we can't. You say that, but
yes.
Some people are willing to see the Band-Aid ripped off.
And
it's not that they can't, it's that they won't.
No, it's they can't, because I understand there are people who want to. And most of those people, not all of them, most of them do not understand the magnitude of the consequences that happen with that. And it's not just in the United States. It's global. It's not just, oh, well, we're just going to do this. We're not Venezuela. We're not Cuba. We're not North Korea. Hell, we're not talking even like Russia. We are the United States. If we start ripping off Band-Aids and just crashing our system, everybody goes with us. And you're looking at rewriting the world. I mean, rewriting every government and all the borders and all the resources around the world suddenly get redefined. And we're not ready for that.
Maybe not, but the more people get abused, the less sympathy they're going to have for these people that are government workers and other people outside of the United States. They're not going to have the sympathy because we're being abused.
We are being abused,
and they're not going to care whether these people can't be reabsorbed into the economy or not. That's where we're headed.
Well, what you're talking about, Dal, is like many people have been talking about since 2017, a second civil war, because that's the logical net consequence. And there's a lot of reasons. It's not just what you're talking about. It's not just shrinking the government or ripping off the Band-Aids and trying to fix the broken system. There's a lot of reasons, like the politicization.
Yeah.
It's a little harder to say today. I don't know why. I must be tired or sick or something.
Oh no, it's the flu again.
Could be.
I've had it. Frank's got it.
It's a flu. It happens every year. No big deal.
It's New York. Marshall, you're coming.
It's a normal thing every year. Who cares? People freak out over stupid things, but it's this hyper politicization. It is this demonization of others that we are seeing, mostly coming from the left, and for the simple fact that somebody decides to not keep moving left. And that's the wild part of it. If you stop moving left, if you stop
I'll be
trying
right back,
to
guys.
subvert, yep.
Okay.
If you stop trying to subvert the Constitution, if you stop trying to rewrite the Constitution or reimagine the Constitution, then you're suddenly a far right, super extremist, far rightist, and it's like, no. But that's why they're going to break the country. We're getting there. We're going to get there. It's just a matter of when. But I don't think it's more than 20 years away. Matter of fact, I think it's like within the next 5.
I mean, you're going to see major pain at least in the next 5 years. And honestly, I really don't see any way that the government is going to be able to cut back the spending without having multiple years of an American first populist government. Like it can't end with Trump's election. If Trump makes it into office and he even does a quarter of trying to rectify the situation without tearing off the Band-Aid, you're not going to get Congress to go along with this idea of reducing spending. The impetus to spend is just ingrained in those offices so deeply that short of the people showing up at their representative desk and being like, you will spend no more.
Well, there's the answer. Well, see, now you just said the answer. We need to make our politicians accountable. They serve us.
Right.
But we lost that message somewhere in the 90s. We somehow 90s, early 2000s, we lost this understanding that they serve us. And it's not Trump. It's not. It's the voters. We need to vote. We need to vote and hold these guys accountable. We need to stop having people in the Congress for 4 decades in a row.
I agree.
New blood.
I agree. But at the same time, the vote is not enough in terms of teeth to enforce the minimization of spending. People have to take back their money. The government only runs on capital. It has nothing to produce. It doesn't produce or sell anything. It just taxes the people for its administration. And unless the people can gain control of their capital again and tell the government, you will spend no more of my money, you're not going to see it. You could vote everybody out. And the minute they realize that they have to fight with voters over whether they can spend or not, they're going to be as subversive as before, if not more. They'll give little things the illusion of choice, and they'll find another way to game the system.
I don't agree with that. I think that if voters, and ultimately, and I've said this many times on this program before, voters are the ultimate source of accountability. We have to hold the politicians accountable. We have to vote them out of office and to regain control of our government that way. And if we do that, then we can start whittling down how much is being spent. But if we keep rewarding the people who keep spending the money because they promise,
and that's the thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Here is when we started on all this. Okay. Because prior to 1913, America could withhold taxes. Okay. They could just refuse to pay it. Now, the majority of Americans didn't. But if they had a problem with government, they could withhold taxes. Now, because everybody that pays in taxes, a good majority of them are on some type of payroll, which means that they get their taxes automatically deducted from their paychecks. Okay, that's been happening since 1913. We have no options to just not pay our taxes. You can't go in and claim that you're not going to pay in payroll taxes. Your employers will not do it because they are not allowed to let you do that.
Right.
Okay. That was
The only other redress of grievances that you have is to try and litigate it, but then you're basically funding your own court case. You're funding
right.
you're funding the defendant.
Right. And the other thing on that, okay, is when they instituted that, see, prior to 1913, Americans were really in touch with the amount of taxes that were being taken from them because every year they would have to write a check to the IRS or to the federal government for the amount of taxes that they owed. Well, when government started taking taxes out of your paycheck automatically, guess what?
You don't see
You
it.
no longer saw that. You no longer had to write that big check on April 15th or on tax day that showed you exactly how much you were paying.
You know, okay. A fun way to get everything fixed? No refunds. Just eliminate refunds. So if you're poor and you pay your taxes, instead of your refund, you get zero. And then you could potentially owe even more in taxes, but no refunds. And I guarantee you that'll get people's attention back.
Mm-hmm. And that's the other thing is everybody thinks they're getting this free money from the government. No, you're getting money that you overpaid to the government and allowed them to use for free all year.
Yeah, it's essentially like you are the bank and you loaned money to the government. They invested it, they make a profit, and then they give you back the principal that was lent to them without interest.
That is what happens. Yeah, that is it. Because we are the bank.
And we don't. And the end result is the federal government can raise taxes on us, and none of us will really know until we all of a sudden withhold not enough. But generally, withholdings get adjusted at the same time tax rates get adjusted. So you end up getting more and more withheld out of your income. And because you've never seen it, you don't notice it as much.
Same problem with credit cards. You don't notice the debt that you're building up because you're not intimately dealing with it every day. It's cash in hand. If I don't have $5, I have $4.50, but I need $5. Well, then you're not buying that.
And prior to 1913, our government really strived to balance the budget. Okay. They tried to work without a deficit. Now they weren't successful all the time, but they tried to keep government operating without having to go into deficit spending. Since 1913, our government has operated more at a deficit than it has on a balanced budget. There's only been a couple presidents since 1913 that have actually been able to operate the government with a balanced budget.
Well,
all the others have generally operated with a deficit of some sort.
No one in my lifetime, and yes, I do include Clinton there because they redid the math. They actually started counting.
Operated at a deficit.
He lost money. Well, they like to say he was running at a profit, except if you were alive then, and I was a stockbroker at the time, they started counting unrealized gains as actual cash currently. That's how he balanced the budget and came up with a surplus, because they counted money that was never actually cashed in from the stock market that was up so much. And that's how Clinton came up with the profit. He didn't. They just redid the math. So it looked good. It's the same plan that we get from Kamala Harris now. Unrealized gains. We'll just tax you for the money we think you might actually have if you were to actually cash out today. It's not my money. It's not real. This is how you make middle-class people poor and poor people even more poor. Oh, you're You have your IRA, you have your taxes you have invested to improve the quality of your life. You bought a home. Fantastic. It's worth more. By the way, give us more money for it. Money that you don't have in your pocket because it's tied up in those investments. Oh, you don't have that? Sell the investment, give us the money. That's what the government's saying. This is how you make the poor even more poor, and you continue to have that poverty class. Harris is destroying this nation on so many levels long term.
That's why
here's
she does
really
the
bad
unrealized
thing.
gains.
Here's a really bad thing about this unearned or unrealized capital gains tax. You can go all year long, operating at a deficit where you have no gains whatsoever, right? And you've actually lost money. They'll take the lowest value that an item is worth, say your home. Let's say the value of your home starts off the year at $150,000. And economic forces and whatnot, the value of your home for the first 3 quarters drops down to $100,000. But the last quarter, all of a sudden, your home goes up to $200,000. They will charge you capital gains on $100,000.
No,
not the $50,000, because value of your home throughout the year, the lowest one was $100,000.
Yeah, and again,
you had a gain from $100,000 to $200,000. The way they'll see it,
and that's even
really
with inflation. Even if it's inflated. So say your home is like worth $25,000, right? Low number, but then inflation over the year inflates the price of your home to $50,000. You now owe $25,000 worth of unrealized gains because your inflation caused the value of your house to go up, not because it actually is valuable, but because the amount went up.
Yeah, but this is all to feed the system, and it's really not even, to be fair, it's not even money to pay the bills. The government's doing it to keep middle class and poor people poor. That's why they're doing it, because the amount of money they're going to generate is nowhere near the trillions that they need to make the budget, just to have a flat, even, just to pay the bills in any one year. Recently, there was a tax cheat. It was caught by the IRS. I think this was earlier this week. A tax cheat, I think it was Monday. And he had to pay 273. It's a billionaire. Had to pay $273 million. And one of the politicos, one of the pundits was like, oh my God, see, this is why we need Harrison. They got to pay their fair share. That's enough money to run the government for less than 1 hour.
Yeah.
I want to be clear about that.
Probably a minute.
Oh, no, it works out to 45 minutes. $273 million is enough to run the United States government for approximately 45 minutes.
Yeah.
That's it. And they're like, oh my God, see, it's paying all the bills. No, it's not. It's not paying anything. That was a drop in the bucket. No one cares. It's not enough, because it's about making poor people poor.
Okay. We added all those IRS agents and implemented $88 billion over 10 years to supposedly, quote unquote, catch all these tax cheats.
Yeah.
Right? So $88 billion over 10 years, that means $8.8 billion per year.
To get $263 million.
Okay. And there is no way we have collected $8.8 billion since it's gone into existence.
No, the last report was $263 million.
Yeah.
That's how much that they were able to recoup after spending $8.8 billion. That's not worth it.
No.
It's a waste of money when the government outspends that. Yeah, when the government outspends it 10 times over.
That's a hell of a lot more than 10 times.
I'm being conservative. The bigger the math, the more my head hurts, and I've already done a lot of math today. So
Okay,
I'm going with 10.
yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. The amount of money that they're spending, they are literally tripping over dollars to collect pennies.
Yeah.
Is what it amounts to.
So ridiculous.
And
you're right, Mike. We need to shrink the government. And the ideal would be to shrink the government slowly over consecutive administrations and curb back the
what
spending.
scares the left so much about Project 2025 is Project 2025 is a step towards starting to reduce our government, starting to get us back into our constitutional foundation. And that scares the shit out of the left.
Right, which is why they're promoting it more than what Trump has actually said is Agenda 47. Agenda 47 does follow a lot of 2025 in terms of like the key points of reducing government. The only thing is that Trump himself is just an average moderate. He's not the rip the Band-Aid type of guy that everybody wants him to be. He's just not. He's a moderate reformer. So he's
Trump's
going to
not
try,
a politician.
So he's going to try and do what Voss suggests, which is little things. Big impactful things, but it's just going to be a little bits at a time. Where it really builds and where it really needs to be is that we have to have multiple administrations that are constitutionally focused and go one big thing every administration. So it's like maybe this year would be the Department of Education, maybe the next, and maybe there'll be two. Maybe there'll be two departments that he's able to get rid of. So he gets rid of the Department of Education day one, right? 2 years later, the ATF is scaled down, and by the end of the rear end of the 2 years, at the end of his term, he's able to finally abolish the ATF because he's able to migrate a vast majority of the bureaucracy into something else, so that the people are taken care of. Personally, I have no sympathy for them. I have no sympathy for the bureaucrats because these bureaucrats were the same ones that told small business owners during the pandemic, told workers that were laid off, well, get a new set of skills, learn to code. Okay. How? Where were they going to go to work after they learned a new set of skills when everything else is shut down and they wanted to keep it that way? Excuse me. So I have very little sympathy for these bureaucrats that are paid by our tax dollars at the end of a lawfare and a gun. But that aside, little by little they bring it down. Fine. 2 departments in a single administration. The next administration, the people would have to be mobilized and they'd have to slog through all the crap that the left has put forward in the last 80 years. And it would have to be successive for nearly, oh God, it would take like 10 administrations.
The left's been putting this forth since the early 1900s. So for over 100 years.
Okay. Yeah, I guess. I mean, I was going to say more conservatively 80 years because the 1913, like it's
1913 to 1923 is 110 years.
Is it?
Yeah.
All right. I just to me that would be the way that moderately you could get to where you're going, but it would be far past what our children would see, and I don't think people have the patience for it.
Yeah, it's a multi. In order to restore this country back, it is literally a multi-generational taking.
And the thing of it is, though, is that multi-generational taking has to persist. So with the things that are happening, like with our current decline in population, the only way that you'd be able to get a multi-generational solution to this problem is to be able to have a generational persistence of America First populism, like civic national populism.
Way, honestly,
and to that, you have to have kids.
The only way that you can create a multiple generational movement like that is literally to start with the educational process.
Right.
And that's where the left got it right. They started in the schools. They started with the educational processes. Okay. Unless we get into the only way to change culture is to start with changing culture with children.
With the next generation, right?
Okay. Yeah. And you have to get that instilled. You have to teach the kids what is a constitution. Okay. Same thing's happened with our policing and so forth. That's one of the reasons why we have so many law enforcement departments that are in trouble for constitutional violations, is because the Constitution is not taught in many law enforcement academies. A lot of people that are going into law enforcement don't understand that their first obligation is to protect the rights of individuals. Okay. They think that it is to enforce laws. No, that's a part of protecting the rights of individuals, is enforcing laws. But they have to change their mindset from the fact that it's not, that their primary duty isn't enforcing laws. Their primary duty is to protect individual rights. Until we start changing that mindset, then we're not going to see a reformation in law enforcement. We're not going to see a reformation in the way people do things. Okay. That's the thing, is we've got to start changing the mindset of people. People need to understand that it's individual rights that are important, not the laws.
Well, okay. It's not just that we have to deal with the local on the local level. We also have to worry about the international. I mean, again, we're fighting a war in the Red Sea with the Houthis that's undeclared. And no one in the media will point that out. And the American people aren't demanding that we get an answer about that. But we're fighting a war. We are active. We've been fighting the war for 11 months now. And that's insane. We have a situation now with Israel and Hezbollah. Meanwhile, we ourselves still have to worry about what's happening with Hamas, because they have still 18 Americans presumably alive, most likely dead. And the American people aren't talking about that because the news media hasn't brought it up. Most people forgot. There's 5,000 Americans in Afghanistan still to this day. No one wants to talk about that. The 16,000 in the Sudan that we forgot about just from last year.
That, again, is a failure to protect individual rights.
Right.
Yes. And it's also a failure of the people to hold our politicians accountable. Mm-hmm. This year we should be replacing the overwhelming majority of the members of Congress and the Senate this year. Agreed. Not just the president, because, well, look at what they just did. We've got a secret war that's an open secret war, the Red Sea with the Houthis. We've got Americans who are being tortured and sexually abused, if not outright killed, as some of them have been, while being held hostage. That's Hamas. We've got the potential of being troops on the ground fighting against Hezbollah. Don't even know why we would want to do that, but it seems like we're setting up for that. We've got the Ukraine, which is being funded for billions upon billions of dollars. That's not our war at all. That's not our country, our war, not our interest. It's got nothing to do with us. And we're involved in that unendingly. And it's all because people are afraid to go, oh, yeah, but I would have to vote against the incumbent and the establishment in my state. And I can't do that. I can't vote against my party. You know what? I'm a Republican. I love being a Republican. I have no problem being a conservative Republican. But screw that. You know, if I have to vote for a different Republican, somebody who's going to stand up for rights rather than the party, I'm happy with that because my rights are more important than the party. If I don't have my rights, there is no party. Does that make sense?
As far as I'm concerned, the party mentality is actually hurting us. People need to stop thinking about the party, and they need to start thinking about them advocating for the people themselves included. The party system, all it does is it helps you classify quickly where somebody falls in terms of ideological boundaries. But the problem is that the parties have merged together so much and overlapped that no longer helps. The classification system is broken. I mean, half the time you can look at other parties, for example, like the Libertarian Party. Half the time I look at the Libertarian Party, I can't tell who's a communist libertarian, which shouldn't exist, or the traditional sense of a libertarian, which is actually a classical liberal. Or
you haven't talked to enough libertarians. Trust me, it's pretty easy to tell the difference.
No, but what I'm saying is that under the umbrella of libertarian, you have all of these different dialectics. That you shouldn't have that. Right. If the classification system actually worked, you'd be able to say libertarian and conjure up this quick shorthand of, oh, they're this. That's what it used to be. You could say Republican, and you already knew it was for like responsible corporate business. It would be for large capital, capital funding. Sometimes wars, because there was very militaristic. It's not like that anymore. Like you can't say the word and actually get a shorthand of what the party is.
Actually, Republicans have gotten us into fewer wars than Democrats have.
Right. But what I'm saying is, as far as the shorthand is concerned, there is no shorthand anymore. The party system has become nothing more than just a football team mentality to try and get people not to think.
Well, it's easy that way. It's easy because you've got your teams. Again, it goes back to feelings, which is what this election's all about. Feelings. Joy might as well be your team.
Yeah, okay. I'm not joyous and I'm not vibing. Right? I'm at the point where I'm just like, this is ridiculous and needs to end. And I would, if I had the time, sit on my representative's desk and be like, you will do no work until you do the work of the people.
Well, that's just it, is they don't do the work of the people. Okay. That's one of the reasons why we started off these live streams talking about the true First Amendment of the the Bill of Rights, which was an amendment that was going to set the minimum constituency of representatives. Okay. And it was initially started off at 30,000 people per representative until the House of Representatives got up to 100 members. And then that amount jumped to 40,000 per representative until it reached a level of 200 representatives in the House. And then it jumped up to 50,000 per representative. Okay. And right now, as a whole, across the United States, everybody is severely underrepresented. Okay, it is impossible for a representative to represent 1,000,000 people adequately.
Yeah.
And that is roughly how many people each representative is in their constituency. It works out actually at about
720,000.
800,000 roughly.
No, 720,000 last count.
Even
With
so,
some of them up over 900,000, well over
Even-
900,000.
even so, then that means that you're increasing the size of the government so much. That actually would help us.
It would.
It would help us by diluting the amount that each representative got paid. So instead of 6 figures, they only got maybe $30,000 a year, which is what the average American makes.
But here's the thing, okay, is if we reduce the number of people that each representative represented, it would increase the size of the House of Representatives. The Senate would still remain the same size as it is. Okay, but the House of Representatives, which is supposed to be the representatives of the people.
Right.
Okay. So if you decrease the number of people each representative actually represents, then those representatives can actually be more in line with the people that they represent.
They'd be more directly connected to them. So
Right.
I see that. And you'd have less power centralized into any one individual.
Also, it would be a lot harder for special interests to gain control of the majority of the House.
Well, I don't think so. That's
I
just
do,
a matter
because
of
there's a lot more people they got to get convinced.
just got to spend money. They could do it. I mean, the bribery, the corruption's still always going to be there. I don't hide or shy away from corruption. Will always exist in government. It is a matter of degree.
But
it is
it's
a matter
not
of time.
as impactful. The larger amount of representatives there was, is the less of an impact that corruption would have.
Yeah, I can agree with that. More confusion in the prior process, but we could work through that.
Okay, because number one, these special interests have a finite amount of money. Okay, it may be astronomical sums, but it is a finite amount of money. Now, if they have a finite amount of money for 438 representatives versus 4,000 representatives, guess what? It's a smaller cut that each representative would get. So it actually has a smaller impact.
Yeah, I'm not against increasing the number of representatives. I'm not against, at the same time, shrinking the size of the overall government, the administration, the operation of the government. You can do both things at the same time.
Yes.
Both of those things require the same core element, though: voters. And I understand
It
voter
requires
apathy.
people being involved.
Well,
More
yeah.
than just voting.
They have to know why they are voting. I say it often. I don't care who you vote for. You better know why. Have a reason. Even if it's a single issue that you care about, that's
Besides
the
the color of
vote.
their skin.
Well, that's not a reason. That's a characteristic. I can't stand that.
Well,
She's a woman. Who cares? That's a characteristic.
I've been talking to my kids, and I get the argument that our vote doesn't count, and I'm like, you've got to be. I'm sorry, you're retarded.
Yeah.
Like, this year proves that your vote does count, and if we don't push that on our kids, and show them by example, by going out and proving to them that the vote actually matters, that we've already lost, because the next generation is just going to do the same thing that I've seen my generation do, and the generation prior to me, and the generations after me that are at voting age. Like this apathy cannot continue. It's an illusion. The apathy is an illusion.
No, the apathy is a consequence. It's a consequence. It's a consequence of
it's a consequence of the illusion.
Consequence of not being coddled by the government to the point that they picked a side. They're giving me free money. I got to keep going with that. That one's good for my business. I'm going to pick them. That's not really what we should be picking on. In this election, we're looking at people, Dearborn, Michigan. They're not pro-Hamas enough. Not that they should be, but okay, that's your constituent. But that's not a side for America. That's not the consequence is negative here. People aren't understanding the consequences. We live in a society that is so consequence adverse. People are afraid to be responsible for themselves. They're afraid to be responsible for the consequences that are happening, and and we're seeing it. I mean, I think Kamala is like the perfect example of the modern governmental leader. Vacuous, without a plan, doing just-in-time politicking. Oh, what is the thing that's going to move people right this minute? What's the thing that's going to motivate them for this next week and then next week and then next week? There is no plan. There is no goal. Other than maintaining power, there is nothing else involved. It's just status quo, kick the can down the road. She should be screaming bloody murder that we didn't get a budget, and she's in charge. Forget about the presidency. You're the vice president. Congress just kicked the can down the road. Why didn't you say something? Why weren't you screaming? She has the bully pulpit. Every news media organization in the country and many around the world are demanding, they're begging her to come on and speak. She could have gone on any channel and all of them and simply said, we must pass a budget. Congress cannot be allowed to fail. You will pass, and fine, she can be as partisan as she wants to be. You must pass Joe Biden's budget because that's great for America. She would have every single news station covering this if she did a press release on that. Would she look presidential? Absolutely. Would she look like someone who's actually understands the wheel of power, how to wield it and why she should wield it? Absolutely. She wants to win the election. That's what she should have done. She should have stood up and said, we're going to pass this budget. Don't allow your congressman not to pass the budget. Yeah. Mind you, I don't want her to win, but that's what a president would do. That's what a leader would do. That's what would be beneficial to America because we could live with the consequences. At least we know what the consequence is then. Instead, we get the Mickey Mouse shell game, kick the can down the road. Oh, yeah, we'll do a continuing resolution until December, and then we'll do another one because now we're going to have a lame duck Congress that's going to be in, and they're going to be as bitterly partisan more than they are right now. Now they have to be at least nice enough to get through the election because they want to maintain power. Afterwards, oh, I lost. Screw you guys. I'm not going to vote for anything, or I'm going to vote for whatever I think is the nicest thing that I whatever wild fantasy I have. And they're going to vote for that.
Yeah.
And it's going to screw everyone over.
I mean, she could have even done it from her chair in the Senate. Being the president of the Senate, she could have looked at Chuck Schumer and been like, get your people in line. We're voting on a budget.
That's it. She could have done so much. And she's vice president.
And because Johnson is such a pushover, he would go with it.
Yeah.
He would have. Because Johnson already he softballed the negotiations and wound up siding with the CR anyway. So it's not like instead of a CR, do a budget.
Yeah. And it's not like, well, Joe Biden's going to get in the way or you're going to step on his toes. Joe Biden's stuck on The View. Okay? Let's talk about how non-presidential he is. No one talks about him anymore. No one cares what he's doing. Everyone knows he's part-time anyway. Someone else is running the government 18 hours a day. He has been relegated to non-existence.
What happened with that? Okay, just as a weird aside, what happened with that cabinet meeting where Joe Biden was at the head of the table?
Oh, Joe Biden was there. This is crazy. So Joe did not have a cabinet meeting for 11 months. Pretty much right after Americans were taken hostage by Hamas, Joe Biden stopped having cabinet meetings. We would think he would have more cabinet meetings and he'd be talking with the generals on a regular basis to have a plan for America or to help with our negotiations. Instead, he did none of that. And he just had his first cabinet meeting just ahead of the election. Gee, I wonder why. And to do that, he brings in Jill and he goes, "Hey, Jill, why don't you talk about women's rights?" And that's his excuse. Well, I brought her in because she's going to talk about women's rights. There are organizations filled with far more qualified pundits, even if you want to just go completely partisan, far left radicals, there are dozens upon dozens in just DC alone, not counting the rest of the nation, that are far more qualified than Jill Biden, who are far more involved than Jill Biden, who could actually do the job. And if you want to have someone not in the government talking about this issue, there are far more qualified people. Instead, he went to Jill. And I think he went to Jill because that gives her an excuse for being in the room with him. That gives her an excuse to be able to speak instead of him. And I think she is his guardian right now, and she's guiding him around like a puppy on a leash. That's what I think is happening.
That's
well, the way it's been portrayed on social media is that and this is both from reports and by individuals, so like your Harry Sissons and so on, that Jill Biden led the cabinet, basically convened the cabinet meeting place of the president
for the most part. Yes.
So there's like whisperings of Edith Wilson in the background.
Yes,
that she's actually been the president the entire time.
I don't know if it was the entire time, but probably. Yes.
And here's the thing. Okay. Joe Dowlings said that Biden should be 25th Amendment.
Yes.
He should have been a long time ago.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We have been on this live stream. We have talked about it multiple times that they were going to 25th Amendment him. We talked about it prior to the midterm elections. We've talked about it shortly after he was elected. We talked about him being 25th Amendment and Harris taking over the presidency. Is, they didn't do it. And honestly, I think that's the only reason why he stepped down is he was threatened with being 25th Amendment. And if he got 25th Amendment, that would lose all standing that he has in the international community. He knows that. So basically his slush funds that he's been collecting for several generations would end.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the tool they used to step on him. He got stabbed in the back by a lot of people, Obama, by Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and many, many others.
I believe that he got 25th Amendment. He got threatened with 25th Amendment.
I don't think that was they did.
2 days prior to him stepping down, announcing that he is pulling out of the race, he was adamant that he was not leaving the race.
Yes, and then what they did do and what they had said, and they leaked this. Nancy Pelosi directly leaked that she was going to be releasing damaging information about Joe Biden in the next week if he did not step down, and that as long as he didn't step down, it would only get worse. There would only be more leaks about Joe Biden and his family. That's not 25th Amendment. That's saying they're going after Hunter, they're going after his family, they're going after his money. That's what took him down. Now, mind you, this is secondary to the real problem here, is that Joe Biden is incapable of doing the job, and yet he still has the job.
Right.
That Kamala was anointed, even though she was never voted for. And we are looking at, and we have no plan for the future on that side.
Let's clarify that. she was voted for by a handful of people, the delegates for the DNC.
Well, when I say voted for, I mean by the rank and file American citizens. No one voted for her.
Nobody that is an ordinary citizen voted for.
Right. The elites, I don't care about the elites. They have their own agenda. Rank and file people never voted for her. She has never. I have been in more primaries than she has.
Yes. And the reason why I say that is because some people are going to come out and say, well, she was voted for. The DNC voted for her to be their representative. And then they will show the DNC convention where all the delegates say that they voted for Kamala Harris.
Actually, you can't even say that because she was elected by an online vote by many of the DNC electors, not all of them. The vote was already done before they actually held the vote in the DNC in front of the public. So again, no matter how they want to count this, the slice of people who are voting for her keeps getting more and more elite and more selective as you look at the process.
And smaller and smaller.
Which is so anti-democratic at every single step.
But this is a party that's going to save democracy, by God.
It can't possibly happen. But the problem, and again, this is the problem. People have to hold them accountable. And there's so many Democrats who are going, well, they're going, mostly Democrats. There are some people who are like never Trumpers, never Donald Trump, but they're mostly vote blue no matter who. Both of those things are a disservice to America because it's about the efficiency and the effectiveness of any elected official. I don't care whether it's left, right, or anyone else. It could be all libertarians. I don't care. If you wanted to put up Chase Oliver or Jill Stein or RFK, if they're the most effective and efficient, fantastic. I don't think any of them are. I think Trump is. But we should be able to deal with that. We are in such a dangerous position in America. Look at how the world is reacting. They see Joe Biden on The View and Jill Biden running the cabinet. They have no respect for him. They haven't had respect for him in a long time. They see that Kamala Harris is running around screaming about joy, yet think she's in a Ren and Stimpy show. If you don't know that reference, Happy, Happy, Joy, Joy. It's a song. Look it up. You would think she's in a Ren and Stimpy show or that she's some kind of drug dealer selling joy because she has no plan and she has she's after nothing but her own self-satisfaction, her self-aggrandizement. She wants the power. She has no plan on how to use it. We are in trouble, folks. Massive.
We're in the middle of an election year, right?
Yeah.
Pretty much getting right on top of it. We got about 40 some odd days left.
Has anybody seen this?
Yeah, I caught that earlier this morning. I didn't get to read a whole lot about it.
What? Soros is he trying to buy some more?
He's buying radio stations.
200 radio stations in 40 markets. Stations reach more than 165 million Americans.
How much you want to bet that some of them are going to get shut down though because they're conservative leading talk shows, or carry the syndicated conservative talk shows?
Maybe, but it would make him essentially the number seven in the number of major news media or media conglomerates in America.
Yeah,
because there's only 6 now.
Right up there with Disney.
Yeah. Except he's a hell of a lot worse. I do not trust Soros. But
here's the thing. If Soros had to use foreign investment, and by FCC rules, ownership of U.S. radio stations is not supposed to exceed 25%.
Yeah.
Okay. So the fact that he's using foreign investment to make this bid request, and then he also asked the commission to make an exception to the usual review process.
No, absolutely not. They should not. They're going to do it because of the money.
They've
And-
already done it.
No, well,
Okay,
No,
the
it
FCC
slipped past
approved it. 3 Democrats voted for the move, 2 Republicans against it. Okay, so it's already been done.
that's a problem. That's a massive problem, and it has nothing to do with left right. It has to do with, well, it does have a lot to do with left right. It has to do with who's going to control, how they're going to control our media. That's something that needs to be reviewed. Anyone who would control a media conglomerate needs to be investigated. I mean, look what happens. Look at what's happening now with our media conglomerates. Everyone gloss past. I hate the way the media is right now. The giants out there are glossing past 3 assassination attempts against Donald Trump. They're glossing past the admission of Facebook, Zuckerberg, saying absolutely, directly and absolutely, that the White House manipulated him and his business and the tens of millions of people using his software to promote propaganda. News media has glossed right past that because neither of those things are beneficial to their fortification of the 2024 election because they have a political objective. And now we're adding Soros, another hyper political individual, into this process. And we're supposed to say, yeah, that seems like a good idea. Oh my God, this is such a bad idea. It's insane.
Yeah, it is.
The FCC sees the money. They're going to allow it to go through.
I don't think it's about money. It's about power. I think it's the fact that they get another very ultra powerful leftist, ultra leftist that will absolutely guide the nation more towards socialism. And, but unlike, say, TikTok and the Chinese Communist Party, Soros is mostly, for the average American, unknown. His political leanings, unknown to the average American. You say China, people know China, bad guy. You say the Communist Party of China, they know what the CCP is. That's why you can get away with targeting them. Soros, people think he's an old man. He makes money. What are you talking about? I don't understand. Yeah, that's the average American.
That's because if you actually call him the archdemon that he actually is, they'll brand you as anti-Semitic.
Have you heard the man speak? Oh God, talk about anti-Semitic. But
he actually helped Nazi Germany round up Jews.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Yeah, that's the irony is that. But if you criticize him, people that support his funding of all these liberal causes and all these, I don't even like using the word liberal, these authoritarian causes.
Yes.
He funds these things, and they're because of that they defend him, and they'll be like, "Oh no, you can't criticize him because that's anti-Semitic." He's a person. He's a person that's doing authoritarian things that are tearing at this country. I can definitely criticize the man for his actions.
Absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with that because that has nothing to do with any other aspect than his action, your perception.
Right.
But if we're actually looking at the First Amendment the way it's supposed to be used versus the way it's being used to manipulate us, yet another thing that the news media is glossing past. Kamala Harris has absolutely said, not even talking about the gun control issue, that she doesn't understand the Second Amendment. Yes, I'm a gun owner and you can have a gun ban. That makes no sense. That's illogical. There's no logic in that through line whatsoever. But she's also talking about she's going to bring back the Disinformation Governance Board. She may rename it, but she wants government oversight on our free speech. She said very clearly that she wants to do this. She said that in her ABC interview. She said that with the CNN interview. She said that to an extent in the debate. She's been very clear about this.
Yeah.
That's destruction of the First Amendment. This woman is and people are just, they're glossing right past it. Oh, well, well, CNN didn't talk about it, so it can't be real or that important. Screw CNN. Actually listen to her speech. Look at the transcript. You know, pay attention. It's only 11 minutes. Our ABC interview was 11 minutes, which is ridiculously short. I've done, I don't know, dozens of interviews with members of every political ideology that have run for candidates over the last 18 years. I have never had an interview that went just 11 minutes. And she's running for the highest office in the nation. I've talked to city council members, people who were running for city council, and they did more than 18 minutes, and they hated my guts.
Yeah.
I don't understand this. I don't understand this.
I don't know. I don't have an answer. My answer is go out, make sure that you're registered, make sure that your family is registered if they're of voting age, get your neighbors involved, be a community, go as a community, and hold your representatives accountable.
I'll make it even easier. Pick an issue, just one. I don't care what it is, whatever your thing is. You want it to be abortion? Fantastic, go for it. You want it to be guns or the economy or inflation? You want it to be pro-Hamas, anti-Hamas? I don't care. Pick your issue, whatever it is. Know where the candidates stand on your issue. And I don't mean Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. There's also RFK and Jill Stein and Dr. Cornel West and Chase Oliver. Look at all of them. They all have positions. And amazingly, all of them have had positions since day one. Kamala, she finally got one up there. But look at all their positions on the issue that's important to you. If they don't have a position on whatever is important to you, don't vote for them. If they have an answer and you don't like it, don't vote for them. And if that means that all 5 of them are inadequate, write in a name. Write in the name of the person that is adequate for you. This is your right as an American. Be heard. Don't just be a puppet. Don't just be a parrot. Have a reason and vote for your reason, whatever it may be. That starts the change, at least in my opinion, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then it's funny, we were talking about expert authority bias earlier this evening. It was mentioned. And honestly, if you pick one issue, you can make yourself an expert on that issue.
Oh, absolutely.
All you have to do is read and discuss. If you read and discuss, you can and apply in certain situations, you can become the expert that can speak on something authoritatively and not have to have a piece of paper that says you went to school for it to learn from other authoritative persons.
Well, having a piece of paper means nothing.
No.
What was it? Bill Gates didn't get the piece of paper.
No, he just built a vaccine empire.
Neither is Steve Jobs.
Exactly.
He's not a pharmacist.
Nor Wozniak.
Exactly. You don't need the piece of paper to prove that the piece of paper is like why a lot of people like to get ratings in chess. It's a badge. Ooh, aren't I smart? Ooh, look at me. Doesn't mean you're...
Henry Ford didn't have a degree.
Exactly.
Neither did Walt Disney.
Doing and knowing is the thing. You know, I don't know how many times I have had people in my since people started noticing me politically. I've had people, you can't know that. Let's talk about it. 5 minutes in, they go, oh, you know things I don't know. Yeah, I do know it. Oh, you can't speak Russian. Well, let's go and let's talk Russian. Let's go to a Russian restaurant. Sure, I can. You know, it's the proof is in the doing and the being and the action, not the following, not the, I guessed I filled out the multiple choice questions in the right way. Random chance, a monkey could do that.
Nikola Tesla did not have a degree.
No, he didn't. No, in fact, his greatest inspiration for AC electric came from the sun. He was laying on his back and staring at the sun.
Yeah.
And, burning his retinas, I suppose.
Probably. Hang on. I got to jump in a minute or so, but one thing that Joel just mentioned, Joel says, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand's term's up. Well, she's the junior senator of New York.
Mhm.
So every 2 years, she's always running. So
Right.
yes, it is up. And he says, I haven't heard anything about the New York U.S. Senate race. The reason for that is AOC is clearing the road because in 2020, it is expected, that in 2026, AOC will run for the Senate to replace Kirsten Gillibrand. Some say that Gillibrand is willing to step down. Some say it's going to be hostile. We know that AOC has been in Florida several times talking to Gillibrand's donors. So suspicion is AOC is going to run for the Senate so that she can get 2 years in as a senator. So in 2028, she can run for the presidency. That's why you haven't heard a whole lot about the New York U.S. Senate.
Yeah,
race.
she's running against Mike Saperconi.
Yeah.
Oh, she actually has an opponent. I thought it was going to be
Yes.
one of those. I'm an incumbent, and I'm an incumbent. Surprise! I'm back again. Not a surprise.
But that's the rumor mill behind it. Yes, the New York Republican GOP, they're useless. They've
really
given
are.
up on the state because most conservatives and Republicans have left New York, and the few that are left are planning to leave New York because there's nothing in New York to stay for. Because New York has become a progressive. They did exactly what Andrew Cuomo wanted back in 2014 when he said he wants to make New York the progressive capital of at least the East Coast, if not the United States. And he's in a battle. New York is in a battle with only California on who can be the most progressive as their economies blow up, as their people are endangered, as their resources, the infrastructure crumbles around them. I mean, yeah.
California this week banned all plastic shopping bags.
Because that makes so much of a damn difference. I mean, come on.
You know what, though? For all of its uselessness, it actually is a environmental piece of legislation. I mean,
but I was told. I remember. I'm old enough to remember when they said this is back in the 90s. I remember when we had paper bags and they said we have to go to plastic because we have to save the trees because it's an environmental issue.
Yeah,
I'm old enough to remember that. So now they're telling me it's the exact opposite now.
Yeah.
So they don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Yeah, I can remember that.
It's funny. It's coming now after they had the study that found out about the microplastics that has dosed everybody.
Yeah.
So after decades and decades of using plastics, now it's like, oh, well, guess what? Microplastics now show up in everybody, every male, every dog, every cat. We all have microplastics.
Like I said, started in the 80s about how we're going to deforest the United States or the whole world if we kept using paper bags.
Yep.
And that because of that, we have to go to plastic bags. Plastic bags are recyclable, they're reusable, and blah, 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 blah.
And they never recycle.
And now all of a sudden, barely 40 years later, we have to rid the world of plastic bags.
Gotta go back to paper. Why did we stop in the first place?
Or you could just go with what they, canvas bags.
Well, that's what they're wanting everybody to go to.
Yeah, bring your own.
Again,
bring your own bag. I
mean, that's the next thing they're going to. But the real thing is none of that.
In fact, they already do it in California. They bring their own bag and get $999 worth of stuff.
Well, here's the thing. We go to canvas bags. What are canvas bags made out of?
Cotton?
Mostly cotton and or synthetics.
What was the biggest driver for slavery?
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, that's why we have all those illegals, so that they can pick our cotton.
No. There's always going to be another thing that they can point to because they need a divisive point. They need a point that people can believe in and that they can follow and that they can blindly, they can virtue single on it to show how wonderfully better they are than the Joneses. It's a whole point. I was just recently talking to someone about one of the housewives of I Don't Give a Damn. And they were telling me about how screwed up one of these people's lives is because I don't give a damn. And they're telling me how much it was really great for them to watch this person self-destruct on TV, which my answer is, of course, they're on TV. I have no reason to believe they would do anything otherwise. And they're like, but you just don't get it. It's so great to watch this person self-destruct. And I'm like, why?
I don't give a damn.
Because their life is worse than mine. And that's not a goal.
No.
And that's not a goal for our government either. But it seems like that's how we're running our government. We're running our government like
a reality TV show.
Yeah. It's like the Housewives of wherever, dumb fuck.
Well, look at everything that's happening right now. This year in particular, Hollywood couldn't write a better script. Multiple assassination attempts, multiple scandals, massive retardation when it comes to how our government is run. I mean,
it's a Bond movie.
It's worse than a Bond movie. It's like budget Bond with a big budget.
Like the old TV series Dallas.
Oh yeah,
a little bit like Dallas. Yeah, although I still say Dallas probably have more quality. And younger people want what's Dallas?
Dallas has more. Dallas has more quality, but less war.
Yeah, we're not talking about the place. We're talking about the TV show.
Yeah, you couldn't get a better script out of Hollywood, at least modern. It's crazy.
It is crazy, but
it's like I said, you can't make this shit up.
No.
Well,
speaking of crazy, so here's the thought. The Trump received a briefing today or yesterday. I think it was today, about the Iranian plots to assassinate him, right?
The five different plots, yes.
Right. And somehow they tried to tie Crooks and Ruth in with the Iranians. As if it was obvious that these two were working for Iran. And I'm going, really? And it looked like Trump bought it. Like all the assassination attempts were fielded by Iran. And I'm like, there's no way. There's no way he honestly believes that those two incidences
were crazy. It is possible in the sense that because we have seen, hang on, in the sense that those crazed nut jobs were speaking to someone. They were getting encouragement and they were communicating with someone. Now, whether or not they knew the people they were speaking to had ties and connections to Iran, they may never have known that. We may know it now because we can trace it, the FBI, if they're doing their job right, can actually trace it back, and maybe there's a whole web that leads directly to Iran. It's quite possible. Not that they would know it, but that now we can see it in investigation. So is it possible? Yes, it is possible.
It is possible.
Does it matter? No, it doesn't matter.
I'll tell you what. I don't think that Iran reached out to them individually and got a hold of them. I think there are enemies within our own country that reached out to Iran and said, "Hey, we got these two guys on the radar. What would you give us to let them act on your behalf?"
No, I don't think so. I mean, think about it. We got Linda Sun is the latest. The latest Chinese spy. Working
state
directly
level
with
government
elected officials. So you're telling me that we have Chinese spies working in the government again, and people are trying to say, well, it's too far for any of the 378 known and suspected terrorists that entered into America
This is
through the
actually
open southern
worse.
border. And you mean to tell me none of them could be talking to the assassins that are trying to go after Trump? Yeah, they
This
could.
is actually worse. What's going on right now is actually worse than the Russian infiltration of the Roosevelt administration.
Yeah. It's more pervasive. And at multiple levels. It's more pervasive at multiple levels. I mean, it wasn't the Russians got into the intelligence community and what?
Russians were in every level of government.
State too? State and local government?
State, local, federal.
I thought it was
all
less
levels.
pervasive.
McCarthy wasn't
one
completely
of
wrong.
Roosevelt's advisors was a Russian spy. One of his main advisors.
Yeah.
They were part of the Defense Department. That's how they got the nuclear bomb.
Yeah.
The reason why McCarthyism was so popular and so fearful is because it was rooted in a reality of the infiltration that we were seeing at that time. It was real. There was a real element to it.
Right.
Today, we have instead of the Russians, we see more so the Chinese element. And we can go back decades on this. I mean, Dianne Feinstein's limo driver that was sometimes substituted for her at various speaking events had been working for her for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And we found out about that in 2000, I believe it was 2009. So you're talking about going back to 1989. So this has been long term. Linda Sun it was over a decade that she was working. She was working with Kathy Hochul and Andrew Cuomo. And it's funny because people want to say, but Mike, you just don't understand it. Yeah, I do understand. The Chinese are only connected each and every time we find these Chinese spy rings connected to elected officials. They're always Democrats. You don't ever find them with Republicans.
No.
Did anyone ever notice that?
Yeah.
And maybe there's a reason for that. Why is it that the left, especially the elected left, are so easily corrupted by foreign agencies that are more socialist and communist? Why are they always connected to them? Because they're never on the right. They're always connected to these guys. That's Eric Swalwell and Dianne Feinstein. We're seeing it with Nancy Pelosi. All over these guys. It tells you something, or it should. And I can't speak. User has been banned. Mentions that the assassins that we've caught so far were both in BlackRock ads. Is that a coincidence? I don't know. I don't know
if they were a coincidence that they're both in there or not, but they were both in there.
Yeah, it's a fact. I can say that. Why that fact exists, I don't know. But Confucius Institutes have been in over 20 colleges across America for a long time. So that has a factor as well.
Well, it turns out that I got an update on the police stations too. And it was that there's actually, they found more.
What, the Chinese police
stations
in America?
And they were using them as centers for for Chinese spies to send diplomatic pouches back to China for espionage purposes.
Well, the fact that, for people who don't know, this came out about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I was talking about it when it first came out. In fact, during a live stream I was on, I gained publicly, was able to identify the exact address, floor, the building and the floor of the illegal Chinese police station in New York City, but there have to be two of them. Yeah. And the thing is, we always knew there were more. We knew there were at least, and it was always stated, at least 4 illegal Chinese police stations. Now, when I say that, I mean that the government of China sent their police and their secret police into America to enforce Chinese law
Yeah.
in America without telling anyone. That's a crime. That is an international crime. And they've been doing it a long time. We knew of a couple of their offices. A couple of them got closed, kind of, sort of, and they opened up new ones instead. They never left. So I'm not surprised. And the fact that they used them for diplomacy, well, that's a natural consequence of saying that the police are, I caught a couple of Chinese nationals that were living in America, or people who were supporting the Chinese nationals. We don't know what they did to American citizens. We don't even know the full scope of this. Am I surprised that they were communicating? Not at all. And why did this happen? Because Kathy Hochul had Linda Sun working for her.
Yeah.
I think that has a lot to do with it. That the Chinese spy in the governor's office was directly associated with the illegal police station in New York City. Do I think those things are connected? Absolutely. But, vote blue no matter who. Ha ha.
Right. No, it definitely indicates that this year people need to get back into being part of their own governance, or this is going to get worse.
Oh yeah.
Well, it is. Okay. And the more people are not involved, the worse it's going to get. And honestly, the only ones that can change it is we the people.
Yeah. With that, I gotta jump. Jump.
Yep. You take care, Mike. We'll see you
All
next week.
Yep, we should probably close it off.
That's what I was getting ready to do.
I'll leave this up, but
right now.
I'm just out.
Yep.
Okay, folks, the only way that we can change this is for us to get involved. Okay, it takes more than just talking on a live stream. It takes getting out there and talking to the people. It means teaching people about the Constitution, teaching people that this government or this country was founded upon a principle of individual rights, not rights of government, not rights of states or anything else. It was literally founded upon protecting the rights of the individual first. Okay, our laws were meant to do that.
Yep.
And we have more and more laws that are infringing more upon our rights. We've got to get this country back to looking at liberty first principles, where the principle of everything we do puts the individual liberties first and foremost, because that is the only way that we can actually obtain true freedom. That is how we institute a country that literally within less than 100 years became a global power, is because we focused on the individual.
Yep.
Okay. We don't have communal rights. There is no such thing as communal rights in the United States. We have individual rights. And those rights are protected in the structure of government that was created by the Constitution of the United States. So our first task as people wanting to restore this nation back to its glory is for us all to become intimately familiar with the words that are in the Constitution of the United States. That is the foundation of our national government. And we now have a national government that is exceeding its authority in ways too numerous to count. Until we, the people, put our foot down and say, enough's enough, that government will continue to usurp power away from the people and infringe upon our rights. Get involved in an organization that is looking out to reestablish liberty first principles. build this country back on its constitutional foundation, like the Liberty First Foundation. You can find us at l1f.us. Get involved. Become a member. Because the only way that we can take this country back is if we take it back through the people.
Yep.
Government will not solve its problems. It takes the people to solve the problems for the government. We're here Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you, everybody in the chat. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Please like, share, comment. Help us get the word out. Help us spread the message. Help us spread the message of Liberty First. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Good night.